morning, everyone. Welcome back in BetSports Golf here for the first look 2024 Texas Children's Houston Open. We are at Memorial Park. This is rest in peace to the match play. We should be talking about match play this week, Ron. Joining me here is the man himself, PGA Splits 101. Again, unusual, like not a new event, just a new spot in the schedule. And I think that's a big piece of handicap in the week. So before we get into it, though, did you watch any Valspar? Any thoughts on Peter Malnati? Any thoughts on Cam Young? Kind of an interesting week there with a jumbo leaderboard, and to see like the putters, like it was like team putt at the top of the leaderboard, basically.
Yeah, I mean, you're almost at the point with Cam Young where it's just, you can kind of expect this. I know he'll get over the hump here soon, but it's just like, man, I mean, it was literally him and nobody else that, anybody else with, that elite type of game. And so, yeah, I know people who had him very frustrated. But I mean, what can you say about the tour this year? I mean, we got he was 350 to 1 in some places, 250, 275. I mean, Peter Malnati, what can you say? I mean, he's a guy who a lot of people criticize, because he kept getting into these signature events and then he goes and wins the thing. So, good for him. I know people are complaining again about, there's the PGA Tour of today. We just lacking those elite players. But it was still fun to watch down the stretch with, guys competing. A lot of guys, who hadn't won in a long time. And so, yeah, I guess it is what it is right now.
Yeah, I mean, the Cam Young stuff is tough. Like, he's still really young. He's just been in the mix so often. I took a shot live heading into round 3 because, there were some bigger numbers. I'm just looking at in terms of like class of player left on the board. I mean, Keith Mitchell's fine, but he was 2 shots ahead of everyone. That's a tough live ad for him to kind of run away. And that course can bring everyone back. But yeah, Cam Young at some point it's got to answer the bell. Winning golf tournaments is hard. He's proving that week after week. We got such a taste a couple years ago of high level competition, top 5 finishes in majors. We're just like, all right, this kid feels inevitable. Like, he's banging putts. He's got the length. He kind of has the whole thing that you would think. Even getting like, your guy Paul on the bag last year thought that would like propel him forward. That obviously didn't stick for whatever reason. And yeah, it's tough to back him at this point. But again, like, the talent is there. Hey, cool from Malnati. I mean, absolute mule on tour for, a decade and just kind of grind it out. And for him to, to find a winner's circle the first time since 2015. I mean, that's cool. I mean, you saw that emotion, I think, on Sunday at the end there too, which is really cool. So yeah, now we will shift again. We're at Memorial. This is, again, typically like one of the last swing season events of the year. So we do come to this track. It has drawn a fairly decent field historically, even though it was a swing season event. But I think that's a big change. We saw the one year that we had the Masters in November versus what happens at the Masters in April. And as simple as that is, I'm not making like corollary to the course, but just the agronomy piece is a big, big thing here, Ron. And I think you should, give us a highlight of what we should be looking for this week and how that changes things.
Yeah, so due to the tournament moving, like you said, from its fall slot, where it's been since 2020, obviously the Houston Open has carried on way before this, but here at Memorial Park, 2020 in November was the first year. And so, yeah, switching this year for the first time to the spring, and, the agronomy is completely different. And, we already have folks doing preview shows where they are blindly assuming it's an all Bermuda course again this year. It's not. So just similar to TPC Sawgrass, similar to Copperhead that we just saw last week, even here in South Texas, the Bermuda still in March does not come in that fast yet at this part of the year. Still very cool at night. And so, yeah, we have another week of overseeded Poet Trivialis on the greens. Now, you may see a little bit more of the Bermuda coming through, but overall, it's still going to be majority Poet Triv here. And probably the biggest change, though, is switching from very penal 2.5-inch Bermuda rough, which was known as one of the courses with the toughest rough on tour. This year, we have the much easier and shorter ryegrass, which is what we've seen also throughout the spring. And it's only, I couldn't believe this when I saw it, but only 1.25 inches. And so, I mean, this is like resort style rough. And so this is just really important because we've kind of seen this theme on the tour so far this year where they're almost intentionally trying to make things easier. And so, especially off the tee this week, when you don't have to, this was already a bomber course where you can, hammer away with driver because this is a long course. I mean, we're talking par 70, over 7,400 yards. It's the fourth longest course on tour. And so this year, you don't have to worry about, finding the Bermuda rough. Like you can just bang away as much as you want to. Approaches are going to be easier. This course is really hard on approaching the green because of all the quadrants you have to hit, these sloping undulated greens. And so, that Bermuda's gone. And, we always hear players talking about worrying about flyers or getting bad lies even around the greens. And so, overall, I would kind of expect the average score to probably be maybe even close to a full stroke easier than, it's been around 0.80 strokes over par per round on average. And so I would expect to see it much easier this week.
It was a grip and a rip it course, even, with the penal rough, as you mentioned, for the most part, or at least when you would look at the leaderboard, it was definitely driver heavy, bomber style guys. Now, again, you could obviously get, guys mixed in like Alex Noren was fourth last year. Aaron Rye was near the top of the leaderboard. Joel Damon has some nice course history here. Not guys you would necessarily profile as bombers, but definitely an advantage. Pretty like wide distribution of approach shots. So like not necessarily a key bucket to hone in on, though you do have, because of the length, you have a lot of 200 plus, 250 plus. Those aren't necessarily your like scoring buckets per se. Like you talked about having to be in the right spot on the greens. But again, you're going to be left with a lot of them just based off of the nature of the layout of the course. Around the green is interesting here too. We have a lot more shaved runoffs, false fronts, and some stuff where like we might find some of that to be prominent this week in terms of like when we're building out models. If we're looking at around the green, it does seem to be something that we need to mess with this week. We need to look at how we get there. And it seems like a week to maybe hone in on around the green with short grass. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, so the rough is going to be easier as far as, just how short it is around the green. But yeah, the short, tight light areas have always been difficult here, and I don't think that's going to change much. And you have a lot of runoffs, you have a lot of elevated greens, and so players are trying to hit, kind of uphill if they miss the green. So I think that part is still going to be challenging. And so definitely looking at short grass proficiency, which we have in the rabbit hole.
Yeah. All right. Awesome. All right, let's take a look at a couple of things here. I want everyone to be able to take advantage of the best course preview out there in the space. Ron's for the Houston Open here is already up on the site, so you definitely want to check that out. So we'll bring that up here. Yeah, I mean, you're going to find stuff in here that you will not find anywhere else. Like you said, accurate, which I think is underrated. Finding out all the details you could possibly think of here. Over on the site. You want some course history. Again, we've been playing at Memorial Park in some form of iteration for the Houston Open for the last handful of years. You can get strokes gain data here on that as well, along with all the other course details here from Ron. When we look at the fields, this is actually a pretty decent field, all things considered, where we kind of are in the schedule, which is, I don't know, it's kind of a weird spot. We're a little bit before the Masters. If you didn't play at Valspar, you're playing like the week before at Valero. Like, guys want to get tuned up a little bit here. 144 players in the field. We have 6 of the top 30. So obviously Scotty week, it is and again, that like I think frames all betting discussions. Scotty is a very short favorite here, rightfully so. Feels like a great Wyndham Clark course where we can grip it and rip it. Short grass scrambling, all those things. So that's another thing those two have been kind of battling the last couple of weeks. Sahith Theegala, obviously, as Ron points out, a Houston native. This feels like a nice little Sahith course as well. Zalatoris, Jason Day, Finau was the last winner here. This was not part of obviously last season's swing season because it was getting ready to be a part of the season's main schedule. But Finau kind of dominated here, ran away with it last time back in 2022. I'm sorry. So yeah, that's a interesting mix. Let's look at the opening odds, which are, again, it's a to Scotty or not to Scotty week. Maybe a without Scotty market. Again, he's familiar with this course. He has a couple of top 10s. He had a second round 62 here last time out. So, course record, not a bad thing. It probably helps the field with the rough being a little bit longer versus what I would think, Scotty would be rewarded for it playing more difficult. If this is going to, approach 20 for a winner, not like Scotty can't win there. He just did it at the Players, but I feel like, the cream rises to the top and separates in these harder courses. So this maybe makes it a little bit more friendly for some of the other guys, especially the bombs, if you want to get down the board. See, this is FanDuel. Shop around. But Scotty is like 3 in some spots. He's like plus 250 in others. So like you're not finding a rogue 5 on Scotty this morning, I promise. Win him there. You see Finau 18, Zalatoris at 20. Same thing with the Gala. Jay Day at 28, Siwoo 35, and you get into down the board here a little bit. Gets a little bit harder to justify, but again, like go down the board and look for some bombs if you feel like it. Interesting week again, maybe finishing positions, matchups without Scotty markets. Well, let's build some stuff here in the rabbit hole, Ron. It's again, these Scotty ones are just going to be really tough. And again, I don't want to be a prisoner of the moment. And Wyndham has been on his heels, and this feels like a nice Wyndham week too. It just is really hard to mess around with it. What are some of the unique things that we want to look at this week that you want to touch on here at first before we kind of build some stuff out?
Yeah, so this week definitely different in some ways from what we've had on the Florida swing so far. So I think the length of this course is going to be a major theme. So a very long course is definitely something we should target in the rabbit hole. Okay. The field strength, I think overall when you measure this up, we've kind of gone back and forth here. Obviously the signature events are strong. Probably this is going to be on the weaker side if you're looking at field strength this week, just looking at overall numbers. And yeah, par 70, I think this is really important for this week because some people, might say, well, why does it matter? Is par 70, par 71, So we obviously have 3 par 5s this week. Okay, not 2. Obviously, many par 70 courses only have 2. So we have 3 par 5s. And so just different ways if you want to take that angle and see, how other players do on par 70 courses. I think the green size is important this week, 7,000 square feet. So this is one of the larger green surfaces. Part of that, I know this is kind of at the bottom of the rabbit hole, is, 3-putt avoidance is another thing I'm looking at this week. And then just definitely, off the tee with the driver heavy, we have the ability to kind of analyze how players perform when they're taking out a majority of drivers on holes. So I think all those things, and there's a couple more we can get to.
Yeah. Definitely a driver heavy week. And I think it was before. And now with this new information based off of the rough, it feels like even more important to kind of focus in on that too. If you're seeing the rabbit hole here for the first time on BetSperts Golf, this is the best tool out there for you to model golf. You want to build a betting card, you want to build a player pool for DFS. This is where you want to be. You can mess around with any type of view, any type of filter you could possibly imagine. You can simply hit this little plus button and it'll add it to a bucket of things to create a mixed condition model, which we can do at the end. If you want more information, you can click this little watch tutorial button here on the site. It is defaulting to displaying these stats by rank, but you can look at average, total, percentage of round gains. You can mess around with round sizes. Again, any type of thing that you could possibly imagine, things you will not find anywhere else. You want just Texas courses? You just grab Texas type courses. You want specific, type of courses. We're going to get into mountain courses later. We've been dealing with parkland courses, TBC. You can just kind of filter all those out or all those in, however you want to do it. You want to look at specific course history. You want to look at Memorial Park. You can go down here and find it. Do you have a bunch of corollary courses you wanted to add to? You can do that as well. It's pretty awesome. You can download a CSV for any of these little buckets. You want to make just a big ass model, slice it, dice it, do whatever you want. CSV is your friend. You will not be able to find that anywhere else as well. You want to get my model this week. You want Ron's model with some other people in the industry. You go into view expert rankings. Simply click on what they have. You can take a look here. Andy Lack has his first one. Matt Vicenzi has his first one up for the week. You want to see what they're adding, what stats they have. Again, not necessarily just like an answer to the test, but like what stats are they looking at that maybe you aren't and weren't considering. You can add to your model and go from there. Pretty cool. All right. I'm just want to look at, hey, who's playing really well right now? I have it defaulted to 2024. Let's just look at, we'll add this to our model to start the morning. You could put something here in the description if you'd like. You don't have to. You can add that in there. Let's just see who's playing some good golf. Let's look at some driver heavy stuff too. I think that's a great way to start off the tee. As Ron mentions, like the rough is not going to be a problem. And we know everyone's taking driver off the tee anyway, off of a par 70, 7,400 yard course. So let's look at, I think tee to green in these instances are really, really important. I'm going to reset this. I don't want 2024. I'm going to go all seasons here. We'll look at driver heavy. Let's say last 50 rounds, last calendar year. Let's see who's gaining strokes tee to green and driver heavy. Yeah, so for the most part, we're getting a decent sample for some of these guys. Like, Jake Knapp, for instance, we're not going to get a full sample. Zal's been out of pocket, so we're not getting a full sample. If you want, there's a minimum round feature here where you can kind of filter some of this out, so you're not messing with the data set, but kind of a tricky thing to do. But you can see here who you would expect. Scotty Scheffler, Steven Yeager, Tony Finau. I mean, Finau just insane tee to green. Again, Scotty light. Like, Scotty's not getting credit here for some of the good putting of late, but Finau has been absolutely atrocious putting as well. Doug Gim, JJ Spawn, another team no putt guy. Luke List been playing better golf. Actually not so terrible on the greens as of late. Jake Knapp, Patrick Rogers, Aaron Rai, which is interesting. That actually surprises me a little bit. But again, I mentioned he was top 10 here last year. Again, he gets rewarded for the accuracy, not necessarily the distance. So he keeps himself in the short stuff, and maybe that's less of a reward here than in years past. So let's take a look at that tee to green, driver heavy. I think that's really interesting. What are you going to do on approach here, Ron? Because there's, again, so many different ways. I don't know that approach bucket specifically from a proximity standpoint makes a ton of sense. Greens and rags, strokes and approach. What are you thinking here? You want aggressiveness? Because again, we have to go for these greens here too.
Yeah. So for this week, I think obviously the biggest area that's going to be the most challenging is on approach. And so what I like to do in weeks like this is compare this week to other courses that have played similarly on approach as far as how difficult it is. And so what I'll do probably is go back in the filter, and I'll go gaining on approach difficult, where it takes this group of courses that are similar. And, I will kind of build a lot of my approach model around other difficult and probably very difficult. I'd go both of those just to get a bigger sample. So it's real interesting just thinking about too here, because when you think about Augusta National coming up in a couple of weeks, like this course, even with the rough being lower, and just like Augusta, has very similar rough now, and it's really short at Augusta. It's almost like this week is matching up with, obviously not as difficult probably, but these greens on approach, just like Augusta has the quadrants, and you have to hit the right spots. And if you don't, you're going to get runoffs, and you're going to have challenging around the green play. And it's kind of similar, because even if you look off the tee now, it's palm away, just like you can there. And so I just think it's really interesting to think about how, I don't know if that went into their thought process with, cutting the rough really low, kind of making it as similar as possible. But yeah, I think approach is huge this week. And so I'll approach it from this angle. And kind of what you said, yeah, I think you can look at, you do need to score on the par fives. And so you can measure, we have those 4 going for the green stats, where you can kind of measure aggressiveness on those holes. I think this is also, along with the approach, you have tough overall proximities. If you're not getting the ball close to the hole, that's another thing to look at as well. And so I would just look at it more from a difficult approach lens, instead of, because if you just look at, last 24 holes on approach, you're going to get a variety of courses that have recently been played. Some of which have been easy on approach. And so, I'll probably take a different perspective and kind of even blend some of those together.
Yeah. Yeah. I'd like to, we get into this part of the season where we start to have a little bit larger, like, current year sample size. I do want to look at, like, at least for me, I might not add it to a model, but I want to look at smaller sample form stuff just to see who's playing really well. If it goes to the model, it's probably weighted significantly less than like a longer view, especially when we're looking at something like being difficult or very difficult. But I do like to look at, see, and make a note. This is where the CSV piece is crucial. You can pull that over and just have a look and see, be able to reference who's playing well in really core, like, small current short-term form. So I think that's interesting. So let's add this. We'll add approach, last 50 rounds, last calendar year. If that gets there, most guys aren't getting to 50. Again, you could see some smaller samples of stuff. Again, you can filter that out if you would like. Just to go ahead and see what that looks like. All right, and you can go ahead and reset and take this off here. I think don't leave it on because then you start to filter all the same, everything the same way. I like that look with the Augusta. I do think that there's maybe something there to that with kind of the way that these long approaches are going to come in and with the way the shaved runoffs are going to come in as well. Yeah, just looking, like I said, at the top distribution of approach shots, it doesn't seem like there's a great proximity bucket to highlight or like to go overweight. I feel like you're going to give yourself maybe a noisy data set if you kind of hone in on something specific. Because again, like you're going to get the 200 plus, but it's going to be hard to score with those, right?
Yeah, there's weeks I'll definitely target certain buckets more than others. I'll give it a higher weight. This week, there's definitely more, 150 plus, but yeah, this is a week where it's pretty balanced, when you look at each individual range. So yeah, I won't focus on that specifically.
Yeah, let's look around the green with short grass. I think that this is relevant. Do you like to overfit? I'm okay with all short grass. I think if we try to go Poa-Triv scrambling short grass, we're going to get a pretty small sample. What are your thoughts on how to attack the around the green stuff? Because it matters here this week for sure.
Yeah, I would never combine. I think if sometimes on the West Coast with POA, just because of how unique it is, I'll add that together. But yeah, I'll just add one of these at a time. I think another unique stat we haven't really talked about here also that we have is around the green proximity, which is that second column. So This is basically when you're around the green, whether you're scrambling or not, and you're hitting that first shot onto the green, it's how close do you get it to the hole. And so, this is for those, you may have some guys who are not great putters who are just so good at getting the ball close to the hole, depending on the lie that they have. And, you could take the angle of, hey, let's look at when they're hitting from the short grass or from the rough and all these different areas. I think it's just a great stat that kind of combines all these together and gives a really good idea of, who typically hits it closer to the hole. So I think that's another interesting one to look at this week, with around the green play being so important. But yeah, overall around the green will have a lot more weight for me this week, scrambling and all these, especially around the short grass, like you said.
Yeah, I like that. And again, you can hover over any of the stats here and we'll give you the actual definition of what the stat is. If it's a new one for you or something you want to get actual details of what it is, that makes it really useful. We'll add the proximity because you mentioned it there. And again, this feels like cheating when you see Scotty, just sixth around the green, fourth in overall around the green proximity, good from both the rough and the short grass. This is where we're talking about like just absolute cheat code for what's currently going on. He doesn't miss much, but when he does, he just saves himself. So that's very, very, very interesting. One thing I want to get your thoughts on too, and again, maybe it matters a little bit less because of the rough change, is the ability to hold these greens with a unique stat that we have, with being able to look at apex height. Any thoughts on that here this week? Do you think that there's any weight to looking at that, or any thoughts on any of these miscellaneous buckets that we have?
Yeah, and I think that goes back to the Masters, comparison. Apex height has always been huge there. Those greens are so firm and bouncy. And the only thing this year I know with the season change, and typically here they've been very firm, and that's contributed to the low greens and regulation numbers here. And so I know the spring has been pretty dry, so I'm going to assume it's going to still be firm. I don't think the Poa-Triv should have much effect on that at all. So I think apex height is something to definitely look at this week. Like you said, with, kind of the different slopes that we see here. And that, when you go back and watch highlights from the first 3 years, you constantly see, if you don't hit the right parts of these greens, the ball's going to bounce off and it's going to bounce off to all these different short grass collection areas. So I definitely think that's an angle. And, another thing I know, we're looking at the rank here. I know some people like to look at actual numbers. And so you can click on average. And if, a lot of times if, you see Scotty's first in something, you want to see, how much is he ahead by, you can actually look at the data here and see the gaps for some of these players, who ranks, not just the ranking, but the actual raw data, if you like that.
Yeah. And actually, I think it's a great point because there are times where it is just insane to look at some of those things, especially when you get into like a ball striking standpoint. He's just been so far above, or even the percentage of rounds gained stuff, which I think is just kind of nuts. So yeah, this is interesting to me. I don't know. I'm not there yet. I want to do a little bit more research. I thought that there might be a little bit something there, but that with this new rough information, maybe that matters a little bit less. But I think that there's typically something that I want to look at when we have these longer stretching, especially par 70 courses where the greens can be a little bit harder to hold, even though they're large greens. So that's something that I want to do a little bit more research in. But again, you can actually not just go to pgatour.com and look at the stat. You can, if you decide that this is something that matters to you this week, you can look at everyone in the field in one view and you can add it to a model. So something you will not be able to find anywhere else. The other things too that are really cool, if you've not messed around with it at all, I love the floor ceiling. This is actually a perfect example of what Ron's talking about, to look at actual raw data, to get a sense of how often does someone have a spike week. We talk about it all the time. It's definitely a big talking point in DFS. Spike putting weeks. I just need, Luke List to have a spike putting week and we're good to go. Tee to green, he's fantastic. But how often does that actually happen? You can actually back that up with data, and you can put any of the conditions on it as well. If you want to look at how frequently someone gains strokes putting on Poa Trivialis greens, how often they gain 3+ strokes putting on Poa Trivialis greens, you can actually back in and look at this. And this is where you start to get an understanding of what's going on with Scotty and how absolutely insane it is. When you look over the last calendar year, the last 50 rounds, he's gaining strokes off the tee to green in 92.3% of his rounds. Wyndham has been unbelievable, and he is a full 16% behind him, which is just absolutely wild. We're talking about just someone playing on a totally different level. And when you look at, when you kind of go back and look, how often is he gaining 2? How often is he gaining 3? He is in a class completely by himself. So again, you start to see some interesting stuff here. Like, look at Mark Hubbard. When it's good, it's really good, right? He can all of a sudden he can get real hot. Again, tee to green is interesting. I think spike putting weeks is really interesting as well, to get a sense of how frequently or infrequently Daniel Berger struggling on the greens right now, struggling everywhere a little bit right now. Finau, this is abysmal. Like positive strokes putting, basically not losing strokes just 34% of the time on the greens right now. So again, he's hard to stomach at his current price, considering how poorly he played at the Valspar. But again, you have to make some decisions on some of these non-Scotty guys this week. So what do you want to do for putting here, Ron? Any thoughts on putting? Do you want to look at Poa Triv putting or anything to close it up here before we wrap it for the people?
Yeah, Poa Triv is definitely one option. Like I said at the start, I think 3-putt avoidance is going to be big this week, especially with how big the greens are, how tough it is to get the ball close to the hole. So you're going to have a lot of lengthy putts. And so 3-putt avoidance on these larger greens, I think, is going to be really critical this week, especially, we'll see what the scoring gets to. I know it's kind of average 13 under par the first 3 events here. I'd expect that to probably go up a little bit above 15, 16, getting in that range for sure. Okay. So yeah, I think 3-putt avoidance, and even we have 3-putt avoidance from 25+ feet, because you are going to see that initial putt, be much further from the hole this week due to the approach difficulty. And so even approach putt performance, which also measures kind of lag putting, I know that's another phrase to describe what approach putt performance is. But that just gets into, how when a player hits their first putt, how close do they actually get it to the hole on their first try. And so, yeah, you see a couple surprising names. Johnny Vegas, not known as one of the better putters, but his lag putting is obviously, at least recently, been pretty decent. So, but you see a lot of familiar names. Even Tony's, lag putting pretty good. But he had been known to miss the short one. So
this is kind of the old Zalatoris stat too. Even when he was struggling, we get those close-ups of it going back and wobbling and coming through. Like from an approach putting standpoint, lag putting, like Zal was usually pretty solid comparatively, and then just it was the bugaboos on the short stuff. So it's interesting to see there's something there with Vegas and Finau as well. And those are interesting names to me because again, like distance matters a lot. Finau's club head speed, ball speed are up significantly. His apex height is up. He just cannot make anything on the greens right now. So yeah, definitely an interesting way to do it. I added 3-putt avoidance, or because you made a good case for that. So I want to dig into that and take a look here for that as well. So let's just take a look and see what we have here, just to give folks a sense if they're seeing this for the first time. Again, there are so many more stats that are relevant this week. Again, Ron highlights some of those for subscribers in our Discord. Take advantage of that. You can find some stuff on the site to get a really cheap subscription through our friends over at Vivid Picks. That is a promo that is going to be going away here soon, or at least will be looking very different. So if you want to take advantage of that, head over to the site now. You can sign up for Vivid Picks, use promo code BetSportsGolf, and get a massively discounted subscription. If you can't take advantage of Vivid Picks, DM us on Twitter at BetSportsGolf. We'll be able to take care of you there and get you the best promo that we have available. Can't get you a $5 subscription, but we can get you a discount on the first month or the annual for you to be able to check that out. So prices are also going up after the Masters. When we throw that green jacket on someone on Sunday afternoon, shortly thereafter, prices for all weekly, monthly, and yearly are going up at BetSports Golf. We have held off on this until we can ensure that anyone that locked in early with us can be grandfathered in for life. So you could still be that person. If you have not subscribed, you want to take advantage of that, you subscribe now, you will have that price for as long as you want to stay on with us. Again, that is available for you. You want to take advantage of that. Again, any questions, DM us on Twitter at BetSportsGolf. We'll help you out. You hit this mixed condition model button, and you give your report a name. So this is Ron and Noonan. First look, Houston. We're working on something here soon. It'll be do the math for you, so you don't have to do all the math. But you can just change the weight. If you put any descriptions in the box, that would populate here. But you can actually just click on this little button here to get an understanding of any of the filters. If you forget, if you add a bunch of things, that's why I think the description thing is really important. If you wanted to add something, you get a sense of actually what it is. It matters a lot when you start to have a lot of like strokes gained total. When you're like building out different conditions and filters, you want to be able to know what they are in one quick look. I'd put a description there if I were you. And you can see here, like this is approach, but this is from, places where it's difficult or very difficult to gain. So you can mess around with any of the weights here. We got 6 things. Let's go with some anchor stuff here for recent form, just to get a sense of what this looks like. It's last 6 months. We'll go 20. So I got 55 left. We'll go 15. I got 25. And we'll go 10, just for the sake of it. And you can see, you could save as many of these as you would like. You can go down here, take a look at them. We're working on some of the back end stuff so you can be able to run any old models. You just want to have like a rolling evergreen form model, a rolling evergreen approach model. You can just update it, run it with the fields, and that could be a standard model for you. So I'm going to save this so you can have the ability to look at it if you want. And let's see what we get here. Should be Scotty and Wyndham. If not, we probably did something wrong. Scotty and Wyndham. All right. That makes a lot of sense. Yeah, I mean, that's just it's a very unique thing. Again, trying to not be prisoner of the moment, Ron, but like they're playing so well. Unfortunately, Wyndham hasn't gotten the winner's circle. This feels like a Wyndham type course when you're telling me we can just grip it and rip it. Short game is going to be rewarded, especially short game on shaved runoffs. Like that. That's what say that won Wyndham the U.S. Open, how he navigated LACC with his around the green stuff. The approach game is so much better than it used to be. Those guys are very, very interesting to me this week. Then you get into some interesting names. Siwoo, Alex Noren, Tom Hoagie, top 5. We get C. Mark Hubbard, who is maybe a little bit interesting. Again, some decent course history for some of these guys as well. Any thoughts, takeaways on what popped out here for us?
Yeah, like you said a couple times already, like if Scotty was 600 or something, like you could justify a single bullet, but when you get to 300, it's just like, oh my gosh, and that leaves you with the conundrum of, is Wyndham Clark, do you think he's value at 1400? Like, you gotta deal with these questions this week. And I think for me, like Zalatoris is really interesting when you think about the Masters comparison with, how he's played there, and very similar course. And so he's definitely someone I think to target this week if you're not going at Scotty. But yeah, I think the Gala, I think this is a course that kind of fits into his style as well. where you have to be really creative around the greens and you have to have all these different types of shots. And so those are just kind of two guys just looking quickly here that kind of stand out to me.
Yeah, I agree. I like both of those guys. I wish, again, we look at the odds board here in FanDuel and shop around, but like first look is pretty comparative to what FanDuel has here. Like 20 is so short, especially for Thigala. Like, and I like him. It just is it's becoming more consistent. It's just so inconsistent, especially from an approach standpoint. I think the like comp to Spieth makes a lot of sense. He has some of that like magic scrambling stuff that is kind of wild. The around the green stuff is like really good. Putting is really solid. When he's not punished for being maybe a little bit wayward off the tee, that is probably a nice spot for Thigala too. Again, the approach stuff sometimes is all over the map too. So again, obviously a ton of talent for that kid. So he's interesting. I just wish it was a little bit of a longer price. I think really the value here is kind of Wyndham to me. I feel like the Wyndham number should be not closer to Scotty, but maybe a little bit further away from the rest of these guys based on how he's playing right now and the fit. Like maybe he should be like 11 or 12. So 14 on Wyndham maybe makes some sense. But yeah, it's a tough week. It just feels really dumb to not just bet Scotty right now. It's like, do I want to advise people to be like parlaying golf outrights to get a better number? Like that's bad. That's bad advice. But yeah, I mean, Scotty to win here, Scotty to win the Masters. You know, you got a friend or a favorite here in the NCAA tournament. You want to book with Scotty, like something to make it a little bit more palatable is again bad betting advice. But it's going to be a real tough watch if you went to this board hard and don't have Scotty. You're going to kind of be really frustrated on the weekend, I think.
And that's part of the trouble is because you would think, okay, well, let me look further down the board and see what long shot I can find. But, with Scotty in the field, okay, let's say he doesn't win. He's probably not going to lose to a bunch of long shots. So even if he finishes in the top 5, you're probably going to see one of these upper tier guys beat him, not a long shot beat him. So it just makes it even more difficult to look for value down the board because it seems almost pointless.
Yeah, we didn't do driving distance. We did, again, you should do some form of that. We did driver heavy, which I think is a really good, probably better to be honest, because we got Aaron Rye in there and Aaron Rye is going to be punished for driving distance. But driver heavy worked. And again, Aaron Rye had a top 5 here last year. So like there probably is something to doing that versus just going pure distance. But if you want to look at who in this field is, absolutely pawning the ball distance wise, you get all these guys here. You could look at carry distance as well. Any thoughts there, Ron, this week? I mean, we've had some spots where like maybe like spongy Bermuda would be a better like carry distance week versus driving distance week. And again, maybe with the small 1.5 inch rough, I probably want driving distance and not carry distance this week.
Yeah, carry distance for me is something I'll look at a lot more if conditions are softer. You have soft fairways, you have wetter conditions. Yeah. I think, it has been dry this spring so far in South Texas. So I think we're going to see a pretty firm course. And so, yeah, carry distance, not as important for me this week.
Yeah. And again, you get in here and you look at the elites that are in the top 10 in driving distance. Wyndham Clark, number 2, Scotty Scheffler, number 7. So, it becomes really difficult to get off of them, although I understand why people would want to try to. Again, and some people are just contrarian by nature, right? It's just you can't celebrate the Scotty wins. Like, right, we had Scotty the Players. We couldn't take a victory lap on having, Scotty the Players, even though you have like an 850 on Scotty when everyone else got like 5s and 6s. He's Scotty Scheffler. So it's kind of tough. So I think people naturally want to find a way to not go to that guy. But man, I promise the money that we won from Scotty winning at the Players spends the same as if you want to get cute with Chris Gotterup or, I don't know, Vincent Norman. That money spends the same. So, all right. Good luck to everyone this week. Again, come back on Tuesday for the betting show. It'll be Andy and myself. Ron will be here with Byron on Wednesday for the DFS show. We have a new YouTube channel coming out. It'll be BetSports Golf, separated from BetSports Media. More info on that to come. So I would tell you to subscribe before you leave, but you don't have to because we're going to have a BetSports Golf channel specifically. So you can find all the BetSports Golf content very, very easy moving forward. So head over to the site, take advantage of the Vivid Picks promo. There's a link on that in the top of the site. It's free for you to read. Any questions, DM us on Twitter and let us know. Again, you want to get in there. You want to read Ron's preview. It's up on the site right now. It's the best in the industry. It is got more details. It is factually correct. And those things are super important. So, all right. Thanks, everyone. For Ron, I'm Noonan. We'll see you all next time.